Hopefully there's enough room. All right. Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is John Barrows and Morgan Ingram. We are here together to dive a little bit deeper. We had an awesome webinar this week with Sales Hacker on the topic of SDRs and how the SDR role is no longer an entry-level role, right? So super good discussion. And there was, I think it was, what was it, like 1,500 people registered for it, Morgan?
Yeah, it was something insane like that.
Yeah, so, which is great, right? 15, and I think there were like 400 or 500 people stayed on board the entire time. And we tried to address as many questions as we could, but we just couldn't get to all of them. So what we wanted to do here is really dive into one specific one that kept coming up, which was all about business acumen and how, as an SDR, how do you improve your general business acumen, not necessarily your sales skills, but your business approach to this. So just kind of wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on this one. Morgan, what thoughts do you have around kids, especially kind of SDR role, that type of stuff, who are new into business? How can they improve their business acumen, or what are some of the ideas that you have around that, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, I think this is a question, and this is a topic that a lot of people touch on, because it's more so focused on, hey, when you get a job or whenever new role that you get, you're focused on how can I get either promoted or how can I get results as fast as possible. So for me, business acumen, I think, comes down from soaking knowledge and being a sponge from other people who already have business acumen. I feel like that's the best way to do it. And then obviously being a practitioner and being in your craft was one of a great way. But I think just being a sponge. So one way that I built business acumen across the board, the reason I feel comfortable talking to a lot of high-level people and it doesn't really bother me as much anymore as most people are bothered by, is because in college, I did something called the informational interview. So the very first personal development book I ever read was called How to Get Your Dream Job by Pete Leibman. And I read this book, and my mom actually gave me this book, and it changed my entire viewpoint on networking and business acumen and how to carry yourself as a professional. So essentially what it said is, hey, look, here's a template that you can have, and you send out this email to all high-level executives or high-level people you want to talk to and ask them for 10 to 15 minutes of their time. Mm-hmm. I thought this was the dumbest thing of all time, and I was like, there's no way that anyone's going to respond to me and take 10, 15 minutes of their time. Yeah. It's from a guy from college, so I was like a sophomore, junior in college, so like, why would they respond to me? But I did it, and the results were insane. So I, at the time, wanted to be a sports agent. So what ended up happening is I emailed, when I had my brief stint at Auburn, I emailed this template to the athletic director at Auburn. So if you guys are familiar with SEC schools, athletic directors are hardcore, and they get paid a ton of money because, first of all, football is really big down here, and every other sport like basketball and things of that nature are big. So I emailed him. He was like, great, let's have a conversation. The 10 to 15-minute conversation ended up being a 45-minute conversation, and he was giving me advice on like how you can grow your career. And so really from that conversation, I was like, I can do a lot more. So ended up talking to the owner of Atlanta Hawks, general manager of Fox Sports South, people at the NBA, people at Twitch, Amazon, and just it really started elevating. And I personally still try to do as much as I did before, and I don't do it as much as I did, but I know I need to do more as always. But I learned so much from those conversations by having a baseline of questions, asking how I can grow my career, what are some things I need to be looking at, and I found out that the things are pretty much the same. And the crazy thing is, the more that I talked to executives, the more confident that I got. And this is when I knew that I had got more confident. I went to the College Sports Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So it's downtown Atlanta. And the owner and the president at the time, who actually recently moved to Chick-fil-A, I was meeting with him. We were having a conversation. He was like, well, Morgan, I'm kind of confused here. Can you help me answer this question? And I was like, okay, what are you confused about? He's like, you're super confident in this conversation, but you've never had a job before, like a full-time job, and you're in college. Like, how are you so confident in talking to me? Like, you shouldn't be, but you are. He's like, well, I've just had a ton of conversations up to this point, and I've just tried to build up my acumen to the highest degree, so I don't get intimidated by these conversations. He's like, that's awesome. So we still talk from time to time. But I think that's a long-winded answer, but the reason I'm going with that story is to show everyone that your business acumen is not going to come overnight, just like success isn't going to come overnight. Right. It's a continuous development of your skills to put yourself right in the spotlight. So as long as you always don't think that you don't know everything and you always have more to learn, then your business acumen will increase and your conversations will be more fruitful.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think the theme I have for business acumen,
if people have been paying attention, for me, like, you know, when you say if there was one piece of advice I'd give myself back at 22 years old, it'd be A/B split testing. But if there was another approach, if there was another thing I would suggest to myself, it would be way more proactive with your business acumen. You know, for me, business acumen was a byproduct of my activities, right? Mm-hmm. So I would just go, hustle, and I would learn things along the way, but mainly based on trial and error. Like I would go into a CEO's office and I would ask a stupid question, and the CEO would be like, "That's a stupid question," and I'll be like, "Okay, well, probably not going to ask that again." You know, and I remember vividly, there was, you know, when I was my first company, Thrive, you know, we sold outsourced IT services, and I remember I knew nothing about IT, so I always had my sales engineer with me. And at the time when we were super small, my sales engineer was my CTO, and I remember walking into this big account. And we were selling them. And the whole idea is I'm the relationship guy, right? I'm the relationship guy, sales guy. And then my tech guy is going to hammer home the technology, right? And we get in there. And this was right around the time when Freakonomics, when, you know, the book Freakonomics, right?
Yep.
So this was right around when it first came out. And I hadn't read it, right? But so we walk into this guy's office, CEO, my CTO, who's my age, he was like 25. He looks on the bookshelf, and there was a book, Freakonomics, and he goes, "Oh, have you read that book yet? Have you read Freakonomics yet?" And the CEO was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." And they started chatting, they started talking about the book, and then what they thought about it and all this other stuff. And you could literally feel the rapport being built between them. And I'm sitting there on the sideline, like, you know, like Freakonomics. That's a pretty funny name for a book. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like an idiot. And right. So that made me realize, you know what? I have to start reading what CEOs read. I have to start immersing myself in the areas that these people, like, I'm never going to pretend to be one of those people, but I at least want to know enough to be ask insightful questions, to, you know, really dig a little bit deeper, but use their expertise to help me learn as well, right? So that proactive of, you know, some tactical things here, and if there's some things, I'll throw in some stuff for the audience, and then you can throw, and then we'll get off here. But some tactical things are, I would set up a Feedly account, you know, Feedly, it's free, and you know, whatever industry or role you're going after, I would create a folder for those and go find the thought leaders in those industries and go to find the thought leaders in those roles and put them in those folders. So when you can kind of just skim through the headlines, maybe read a few articles every morning, kind of get in your morning routine. The other thing, to your point, those informational interviews are great. I would just make sure that I you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they were absolutely almost a foolproof way of getting in front of somebody, as long as you weren't trying to sell them on something. Now I think it's been used a lot. And so now just make sure you do your homework before you send that email to that executive that you want to have that conversation with, and have some relevance to it. So it's not just, hey, I'm looking for an informational interview. You'll get a much better feedback on that. And then don't hesitate to leverage the resources within your own company. So for instance, you know, you and I talking right now, like I used to be a VP of sales. I am a VP of sales to a certain degree. I'm a business owner too. So I mean, one of the things that we're working on is, you know, not only get you ramped from a sales standpoint, but also show you how to run a business, right? This is a unique relationship that you and I have, because, you know, we're only two people doing this. But, you know, in business, every company has a CEO, a CFO, a CIO, that type of stuff. And I guarantee you, if you're a sales rep and you walk into your CEO's office at one point and say, you know, or at lunch or something like that, and be like, hey, would you mind? I'd love to just learn about, from a CEO standpoint, how you see things, and, you know, what's a priority for you, you know, especially if I'm cold calling into CEOs. I'm going to go talk to my own CEO or my own CFO or my own gatekeeper. Like if I'm having a hard time getting through gatekeepers, I'm going to have that conversation with the people who are right next to me and guaranteed willing to help. So I think those things you can do from a very tactical standpoint to improve your business acumen, and constantly do what you do, which is reading all the time, right? Like I compartmentalize reading into small chunks. I'm more blogs and stuff like that. So what I use is Get Abstract, which is a 3-page summary of every book out there. So that kind of gives me enough to be able to, like, all right, I got the gist of this. Now, if that comes up in conversation, I can actually be, you know, I can be educated as I have that conversation about that topic, right? So any other tactical things that you could suggest that reps do to improve their business acumen?
Yeah, so, you know, I always tell people my tactical advice is extreme And a lot of people don't want to do it. But if you do it, you get extreme results. That's what I always tell people. So I think this is really important. So this is critical. So what you could do is set a task for yourself and be like, hey, I want to meet 5 to 10 new people every single week. So that's essentially 2 people a day for the most part, or 1 person a day if you just do 5. And so what you can do is just go type up the titles that you're going after, or type up the people that are like within your industry that sell the same kind of product as you, and like have a conversation with them, and then reach out to them like, hey, Michael would love to have a conversation with you and talk about how we can help each other from a sales prospecting standpoint. Mm-hmm. Hey, Bob would love to have a conversation with you because I see that you're this title, and I talk to a lot of people like yourself, and I'm just curious to see what you care about, just so I have a better context when I'm selling into your peers. By doing that, some people may not answer you, but a lot of people will answer you, and you'll have a conversation for 10, 15 minutes. You'll get some valuable insights. That person may additionally maybe able to help you, or they don't, but it doesn't matter because you're going to get the value out of it. And also you're going to create a big network that's going to be helpful for you in the long run. I think that's like number 1. I think number 2 is watching different YouTube channels and podcasts, and then really taking them to heart, and then getting like 3-5 takeaways that you can either post, mm-hmm. or you can just take that in. And then when you take that in, just use it on a call, or use it through email, or use it through whatever sales call that you're going to have. And then you can also additionally reach out to those people that were in that podcast or that interview, like, hey, I really enjoyed your interview. And maybe they'll be like, yeah, like, do you have any questions? And then you can have a conversation. Yeah. And I think additionally, what also helps is just going to local networking events in your area to increase your business acumen from people that are just giving out advice. So I try to go to 4 every single month. Again, this can be exhausting. Mm-hmm. I mean, people don't do it. Like, I went to one last night, and I was like, I wanted to go, but at the same time I didn't. I was like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Like, I've been really heads down for the past 6-7 months, and I'm starting to feel a little bit tired, right? Like, I'm motivated still, but I'm just a little bit exhausted. Like, and that happens to everybody. And I was like, the last thing I want to do is sit in Atlanta traffic and go to an event. No. But I did it, and it actually was super beneficial because I learned a lot. I networked with some new people that I hadn't networked with before. I saw someone that I hadn't seen in a while, and we hung out, and we had a good time. I met new friends because I hung out with that person. It was awesome. We're reconnected, so we're going to do some cool stuff around the Atlanta scene. And then also I met someone who had seen my content on LinkedIn, and they wanted to talk about training. So if I hadn't gone, I could have missed out on all those things. But I think you have to think about, okay, how's this? I always think about, why am I doing this? And then also, what's the long-term benefit of this? Right. I can suck it up for 2 hours. I can go to sleep on the weekend and catch up on sleep. But I may miss an event that could change the trajectory of my career, my life. So those are some just practical things.
No, I love it, man. I think networking events is one of the best things you can do as a sales rep, because it's a great way to practice, right? Everybody's there for a reason, and it's networking. So yes, it's still awkward going up and introducing yourself randomly to people that you don't know, but at least everybody's there for that reason. So it's kind of a safe ground between, like cold calling or whatever, and like full-blown face-to-face selling. If you're trying to figure out that outside of the benefits of networking with different people and then building out your own network that you can leverage later on, which I'll talk about in a second, the other idea of just learning stuff, to your point, and potentially finding business and those type of things, network and practicing. Again, when somebody says, what do you do? And you tell them what you do, you can literally watch how they react to you. And if they're super engaged in the conversation, that's a great thing. If they're like, oh, you know what, I got to grab a beer, I'll be right back. Well, then something's off, right? So, and just to put a point on networking, I did so much networking when I was around your age. And my first time, I went to networking groups and events, everything that I could get my hands on. And I always had this giver's gain mentality, which Business Networking International, which is the first networking group that I belong to, that was their whole philosophy, giver's gain, right? So you give leads to people, you make connections to people, and you rarely ask for stuff. Right? It's jab, 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 right hook, right? So that's really what I did. And then when I had to start my own company, right? When Basho fired us, I had to start my own company. And my business partner, we were like, oh crap, what do we do? But I had developed such great relationships with my networking partners that every single service was one phone call away. So I called up a buddy of mine and was like, dude, I need some help. I'm starting a business. I need payroll. He's like, John, I'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. 6 months free. Hey, so-and-so, I need legal work. Yep, John, I'll set up your contract, stuff like that. Hey, I need a phone, all these different things, like everything. I mean, the amount of stuff that you need to start a business is not insignificant, right? But every one of them was one phone call away. And because I had worked so hard on those relationships, they either gave it to me for free or at a massively discounted level. So within 1 week of us having to start a company, we had a fully functional website, we had our contracts ready, we had everything you could imagine taken care of. And I remember my business partner was like, holy shit. He's like, dude, what in the world? Like, how did you get all this stuff done? I'm like, well, I don't know. I've had those relationships. I now can ask on them. So networking's huge. Yeah. So I think that kind of covers the business acumen piece here. It's just, I think my final thoughts on this, and I'll hand it over to you, is really just, again, be proactive about it. Don't react. Like, do a Google search. If you're selling into CFOs in the financial services industry, do a Google search on CFOs, financial services industry priorities 2018. See what comes up. Somebody's out there talking about it. Read it, learn it, and be able to use that in your conversations, right? So any parting thoughts for anybody here on Business Acumen?
Yeah, so this will change your mindset on a lot of things. This fundamentally has changed my mindset on a lot of different things when I have conversations. So, and this is why I actually read a lot of books. This is what I tell people. So business acumen can be done through books. If you guys know me and you've been following me since day one, I talk about books all the time. I don't talk about reading a ton of books to tell you guys I read a ton of books, just to tell you that I do that, just so you can be like, oh, Morgan reads a ton. That's not the reason. The reason I do that is because you can absorb knowledge that is above your timeline, right? So 30, 40 years of experience. So if you see a book, I don't have one next to me right now, but if you have a book and you read it, you essentially can gain 30 to 40, 50 years of knowledge that you don't ever have to face or ever have to see ever in your life. Right. You're essentially just creating a ladder instead of going through the hardships, running against road bumps and hurting yourself. Unless you like hurting yourself and hitting road bumps and getting dirty up, then don't read it. Don't read the books. Like, don't have any business acumen. Like, great, that's awesome. But for those of you that want to avoid that, like me, if you read the books, you are now absorbing years of experience. So I see it as every time I read a book, I get 30 years of experience if that person has 30 years of experience. So if you read 200 books, you essentially have 600 years of experience. Now, that's not in reality. Like, I'm like, have 1,000 and millions of years of experience. But in your brain, up there somewhere, subconsciously, you have that. So now when you act on certain things, when you say certain things, that comes out of you. There's certain words that I say half the time where I have no idea where it came from. It's just because I've read a lot of books. Yeah. And that grammar and that verbiage and that vocabulary has increased for me. If I didn't read the books, then I would sound different, and my words would be different, and the way I would articulate my message would be different. But that's why I read those books, and I encourage everyone to just read as much as you can. And it's not reading 20 books a month. It could just be reading 1 book a month, 12 books a year. Mm-hmm. Super simple.
Love it. Cool, man. Well, hopefully everybody got a little bit of value out of this one on a deeper dive. If you want to see anything about Morgan or me, go jbarrows.com. We put out the majority of our content for free there, so hopefully you enjoy it, and let us know if you have any questions, all right? Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Later. You want to stop?